Hello and welcome back to City Skylines Canada. Today we've got a great build wherein we place a stadium along Elizabeth Bay and continue to fill out the peninsula with some extremely Vancouver style developments. This video's been up on Patreon Early Access for a while, so if you want to support the channel, check out my Patreon. So I started off by placing the stadium itself, which is the Centre Videotron from Quebec, and then placing some of the buildings connected to it. At this point, I was just roughly planning things out, and the next thing I planned out was the road layout for a good portion of the peninsula. And this was just some more of the standard grids meeting stuff from last time. The only thing I did here worth noting is that Pacific Boulevard curves inwards and then outwards again to become the road that will go to the islands at the tip of the peninsula. While the metro bridge over Elizabeth Bay is kind of unrealistic, the story behind the metro is that much like Vancouver, the city hosted the Olympics at some point, and built the elevated metro line for that reason, explaining the flashy path it takes and its disconnect from the rest of the metro and transit network. Now I wanted to make the stadium a bit more unique, and to do so I used procedural objects to make some decorative spires somewhat similar to BC Place. But I didn't just want to make these a replica, so I curved them inwards. I'm really proud of the process of placing these, because first of all I used prop line tool to make a circle of cars, and then scaled the stadium to be a perfect circle using that. And then I deleted most of them to properly space the spires and used Move It and the circuit cars to get the angles perfect. The end result is amazing, and the spacing is exactly correct. Now I built a little 3-platform bus terminal in front of the stadium, and since I've already spent a whole episode on another bus terminal, I'll take this opportunity to talk about what purpose the stadium actually fulfills. So first off, it will be called Canada Place, paying homage to BC Place in Vancouver, and of course to the country it's in. The stadium is the home arena of the NHL pro hockey team for the city, whose name is yet to be decided, a process which I'll probably do in the polls like I've done with the trams. The result of that tram poll will be announced next video, along with implementing any changes should the Maple Leaf trams win. My Patreon's votes will count to 7% of total votes, meaning that if 100 people vote on YouTube, each Patreon vote will count for 7 additional votes. The only thing really worth noting about this bus terminal is that I took some PO numbered platform signings from the other bus terminal. I do a lot of PO station signage off camera because it is a slow and laggy process. I feel like I haven't been including enough foliage for what is a city based off of Toronto and especially Vancouver. 2 really green cities. So in this episode I'll be placing a lot of trees. I found myself having a lot of empty space around the stadium, so I decided to fill this spot with an outdoor common area with some tables and a big screen. The screen ended up being just a modified billboard with an ad, although to be fair, ads is what would almost always be playing, so it does make sense. Now, as you've seen me do in many places throughout this series, I've covered/will cover the entire area around the stadium with procedural object tile decals, just to tie the area together. And as I've done throughout the entire series, those 30 minutes of footage will not be shown in this episode, so that I can keep it shorter and actually have footage worth talking about. This road on the other side of the stadium will be the same type of road as Pacific Boulevard over Fox City, which is what we built in last episode, allowing cars and taxis to stop for drop-off purposes. Now I'm going to use these letters to make a nice touristy Canada Place sign. Now don't worry, I have another set of letters to make our own version of the Toronto sign once we have a city hall to put it in, and a name for a city, which is something I've been procrastinating on picking, so if you have any suggestions, please drop them in the comments. I made another outdoor area, and now I've put this athletic looking statue just to fill the space with something other than tables. I've left the space in front of the sign mostly clear for tourists to do their photo ops, and I've also made this plaza extend over the lower elevation area near where Pacific Boulevard and Bayview Boulevard meet. With the majority of my stadium build completed, I set about filling a lot of these empty blocks. And there won't be any free build today because I didn't really build anything separate from the main build area. For this block south of Terry Fox Avenue and between Melbourne Avenue and Richmond Street, I put 2 condos and a hotel. And only one building here really makes an impact on the skyline because I didn't want to affect how noticeable the nearby 2 skyscrapers were. Now filling this block across Richmond Street from that one was quite difficult because the street behind it meant that I had to carefully choose how to angle my buildings. I ended up placing 2 more condos of varying heights whose bases essentially walled off the curve with commercial mixed use, and left the Richmond Street side for some nice plazas and patios, which we'll detail later on in the episode. I'd made these condos off camera, but they looked so good here that I absolutely had to put them in. And this area here on the peninsula will be the most Vancouver-like area in the city, so expect a lot of similar condos next episode. I debated putting condos here so close to the stadium, but decided it was necessary as they provide the skyline with a lot of depth when viewed from the bays. It took me a really long time to PO these to be acceptable, and you can actually get access to all of my PO buildings on my Patreon. I went with 2 towers because it is based off of Vancouver, and then covered up this hill with some foliage. I also made a little plaza here right in front of them because I'm planning on putting actual development on the other side of the road from these, which is why it isn't the elevated version of the road which I've been using as a seawall. The other exposed bit of land will serve more as a station entrance than a stadium entrance because all of the infrastructure for people to arrive is on the other side of the stadium. I later replaced those props with some custom signage with station names and times, which you will see in the cinematics. To connect the plaza in this little area, I've placed some stairs and then built a path surrounded by nature. This isn't a very traversed route, so I liked being able to include a dash of greenery. Something that I also ended up doing between the stadium and the road, because I don't really want people here considering that the road is fenced off. Now that I've finished my stadium, the last thing I'll be doing today will be detailing all of those blocks we've filled in, starting with the one with the hotel. This is a block that is very out of focus, serving more as a transition between the station area and Foxhill and the peninsula. So the detailing here is just some trees and planters that cover some of the terrain differences and fill in empty pavement, because that's all the detailing really has to be. I want this area by the stadium, especially the little side alleys, to be very tree covered, both to further emulate Vancouver and to feel like the stadium plazas are essentially clearings for people to congregate. So I've surrounded this parking garage with trees to somewhat seclude its ugly facade from Alexander Graham Bell Street. Now for this building, I've just slapped some tables around it, and the core idea for this area is to have a lot of trees and a lot of small sidewalk cafes with patios that make it a very trendy area to visit and walk around beyond the stadium when it's not winter. Now on to a larger public space. This area along Richmond Street is 2-tiered and split into 4 sections by the angled buildings. The basic blueprint for all of those sections is some tables surrounding some trees which provide additional shade and take away some of the visual sharpness of the building angles. And this area is designed as a place to go out with for lunch on a weekend or to get beer with friends after watching the game at Canada Place. And I've put a bit more care into the tier at the altitude of Graham Bell Street, as it is a lot more visible and important. I've started with some planters along the street to protect and seclude the area, giving a more cozy vibe. And then I placed some angled planters, especially at the point where a fall would be very, very bad. And I placed some large, space-filling tile decals, and then finally the tables around the planters in a somewhat irregular pattern. Moving on to the block across from the stadium on Richmond, each corner will be a patio. This one a Starbucks because compared to other franchises, there's no franchise that has as much workshop props as Starbucks does. And I've used procedural objects to modify one of those props onto the brick walls of the building, taking care to remove the drive-through signage. The other patio is just a patio with some trees around it to keep it quiet on a busy place. And then the final block we'll be detailing will be the block across Pacific Boulevard with the PO condos. The 2 condos on this block form the greater part of the complex started in the condo across the street, so they do get a podium. And this podium which I've made will make a lot of appearances in this series because it's quite generic in design and fills a role that very few other assets fill. Finally, having finished my podium, I filled out the block with some trees you can see from the metro. That's all for today, and there won't be a how-to video coming from this one, so the next video might be a Canada video where we fill out the peninsula, or it could be like a how-to video where I list important mods. I don't know yet. If you like this video, remember to subscribe and you can support the channel on my Patreon, link down below. Have a great day.